I've always known that I was adopted. I learned that early in life. I was probably in kindergarten, first grade when my parents sat me down and explained that to me. Um, and it was hard. It was hard, having someone tell you that they're not your biological mother and father. But my parents were amazing, and they loved me dearly, and they guided me as best they could through all that. And it wasn't really until high school that I learned the whole story. Um, my mom and I were driving down Haywood Road in Greenville, and something came on the radio, and I couldn't tell you what it was at this time. It doesn't honestly matter. What led us to the conversation, I looked at my mom and I said, Mom, I can't imagine somebody being raped and then being pregnant and having to carry that child. That's just, I can't imagine. And she so casually looked at me and said, well, Ashley, honey, your birth mother was raped. And in movies, when time just stands still for a little while, that was kind of that experience. Everything was slow motion. And I remember looking out the window, and all I could hear in the back of my mind was, you're a product of evil. You were never meant to be. And at that time, though I was a believer, I wasn't a strong believer. And so at that time, those words were powerful and resonated with me and stuck with me for years. And it wasn't really until I continued to seek God's voice that those words started to dissipate. And I realized whose I was and who truly loved me. And all of that led me to understanding God's plan for all life. And that it wasn't just life that is convenient or planned, that is powerful, that is important, that is worthy of life. It's all life. God has a plan for every single living being from the moment they're conceived, actually from before. He has a plan. It's already in place. And though, no, my conception was not ideal. It was not your typical or your what's the word? Well, we're just going to say ideal for now. It was not your ideal situation. God still had a plan for me, and he still knew that I was going to be conceived that day. And he still knew that he could use me to do whatever he needed me to do, provided I was willing to submit. And I pray that I'm doing that. I pray that this is what he has me do. This is his story that he gave to me. And so I try to make sure he gets all the credit for it all the time. There are so many families that are desperate for a child. I would plead with that woman with all love and sincerity to please give that child to another family. I was adopted, and my parents tried desperately to be able to have a child of their own and couldn't. They always lost that child in late second or early third trimester. And so by my birth mother being brave enough to give me life and then to give me up, this other couple, my parents, were able to complete their family. And it's all part of God's plan. It's all part of God's design. He lays it out there. And as long as we can do our best to follow what he wants us to do and acknowledge him in all things, his plan will come to fruition. And I fully believe that I was part of my parents' family plan. There is a quote on abortionfacts.com that I use quite regularly. And that simply says that there is no difference between a child conceived in love and a child conceived in rape, because a child is a child.